Hey everyone, Chris here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the books I read between April 6th and April 12th. First up is Oak Flat by Laura Redness, and I gave this book 4 stars. This is a visual nonfiction book. In this book, we get to hear from a bunch of people who are involved with the fight over whether Oak Flat should be preserved or whether it should be allowed to be mined for the copper that it has. We hear from people on both sides of the divide and learn about their history. On one side is an Apache family whose daughter has been prominent in the fight to preserve things. And on the other side is a mining family who have familial ties back to a sheriff who was around when Arizona was still new. So I thought this was quite the interesting read. It was very unique in how it was presented because, like I said, it's a visual nonfiction. So there's like drawings throughout it that depict some of the scenes or some of the characters, which definitely gave the book a different feel. I liked that the author tried to present both sides of the issue. I will say I learned some things in this book that made me want to hurl the book across the room several times, as some of the things that I learned were very, very frustrating, and some of it is current day stuff, but some of it is things that have happened in the past. As we learn about the history of both of these families and getting to see how these people were treated in like the 1800s and stuff is just frustrating, and I hate that these people were treated like that in our country, and that is part of our history. It is also hard knowing that in some ways they're still being treated this way, which is even more awful because it means we have learned nothing. The reason this didn't get 5 stars is the ending felt a bit abrupt, which I'm assuming is partly because this fight is still going on. Nothing has been resolved yet, as far as I know, or at least it wasn't when this book was released, and I believe it was released last year, so it's pretty up to date. And so the book kind of ended abruptly, and I would have liked a maybe more fleshed out ending, but I understand that the author might not be able to give us that, given that it's an ongoing situation. All in all, I really like this book, and I really did enjoy learning about Oak Flat and its history and the people who are involved with the current controversy surrounding Oak Flat. Next up, I read The Relentless Moon by Mary Robinette Cowell. I can't tell you what my rating for this was, as it's one of my 5-star predictions, so you'll have to tune in to my 5-star prediction wrap-up for that. This is the 3rd book in the Lady Astronaut series, and in the 1st book, it's basically a meteorite has hit the east coast of the Earth in, I want to say, the early 1950s and completely wiped it out, and scientists know that eventually we're not going to be able to live on Earth anymore because it's going to be toxic. So the space program is rapidly accelerated, and we are trying to set up a colony on the moon since we know we are going to have to get off Earth. So this is the 3rd book in that series, and we're continuing on with the story. I will say this book has a different point of view than the first 2 books in the series. It's a character we know from the first 2 books, but it is not the character whose point of view we've been following in the first 2 books, which I wasn't expecting. In this book, there is a mention of a polio outbreak, which had some obvious similarities to current times, and I wanted to mention that in case anybody finds that triggering. And I also will mention that one of the characters has an eating disorder, though the author's note at the end of the book says that the author really tried to avoid saying or writing anything that could be triggering in her depiction of this eating disorder, while also trying to be true to the eating disorder. As I do not have one, I can't speak to the accuracy of that, but I wanted to mention that in case that is something you need to go into a book knowing or need to avoid altogether. Otherwise, I don't really want to talk about what I thought about this book until my wrap-up, so keep an eye out for my 5-star prediction wrap-up, which is coming soon. And the last books I read, I'm going to group together because they're all part of the series, and that is books 3 through 6 in the 4th arc of the Warrior series. I gave Night Whispers 4.25 stars. I gave Sign of the Moon 4.5 stars. I gave The Forgotten Warrior 4.25 stars. And I gave The Last Hope 5 stars. So if you're new to my channel, Warriors is a series that follows forest cats who live in clans and have to try to live together and solve conflicts, and sometimes they're peaceful and other times they fight, and they just have to learn to survive. I've been doing a reread of this series in the hopes that I can eventually catch up on all the books that I haven't read, and I will tell you, I have finally gotten to the point where I have read new material. I know I stopped at some point during book 5 now. I couldn't remember exactly where I dropped off, but I knew it was during this arc, and now that I've read this whole arc, I know it was during book 5. I don't remember reading the end of book 5, and I'm absolutely positive I never read a single word of book 6. I loved this arc. I love how it tied together so many threads that have been put out during the first 3 arcs, and of course this arc in the series. It was so nice to read new material, and I just loved that last book and the way this arc tied up. We've got several different points of view throughout these books, and I think each point of view that they chose to highlight really adds to the story and the overall narrative being told. I love this series, and I think this is probably my favorite arc since the first one, which is due in large part to, like I said, the fact that it tied up so many things that have been dropped throughout the series as a whole so far. I love these books, and I cannot wait to continue to read more from this series in this world. So these are some of the books I've read recently. What is a book you've read recently? If you've made it this far in the video, leave me space emojis in the comment section below. Like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!